Okay, so about 15 years ago, the European Union did something special. And that is that, oh, they stopped my slides. That is that they put out a report where they asked the science community to think about the following question: what happens if we have 10 billion euro available to stop the HIV pandemic? And so when you start to think about that, the second question would be, okay, if we want to stop that, is that a question about changing behavior? Or is that a question about changing medication, right? And if you ask that question, then you're into digital twinning. And the reason why you are is that if you think about different medication, you have to think about the molecular processes. You have to think about how the medicine works in your body. You have to think about your immune system. You have to think about transmission. And you have to think about, then you come to the next question, you think about the social interactions or the sexual interactions or the drug use interactions. So it is really from molecule to man. You really have to, in order to get an answer to this European question, you really have to think about the whole pathway from molecule to man. And so that's what we did. So we brought together a group of 20 people from all kinds of different walks of science life, science walks. And we built this system where a patient comes in, we get three pieces of information. We get the viral load, we get the mutations of the virus, and we get the state of the immune system in terms of the CD4 expression on the white blood cells. And then we go two ways. We do text mining. That means that we actually mine all the literature for that particular combination of mutations and drugs and CD4 expression. And we go a long, long way of simulation, where we have simulation all the way from the molecule up to the social interactions. So what we do is we know the drugs, we know the mutations from the patient data. Based on that, we do molecular dynamic simulation that gives a feeling of how well that particular drug will work in that particular patient. So it's really for the patient. Then we calculate the immune response of that. So by the way, this is molecular dynamics. So this is text mining. This is molecular dynamics, and this is agent-based model, where we have an agent model of the immune system. Then we do calculate the possibility of transmission because of the immune system. We know that the likelihood of transmission, and then what we do is we look at the different populations. So we look at the heterosexual population, homosexual population, and the intravenous drug users. So we plug that in. So we got that data from the Center of Disease Control, and then we give advice to the doctor. So that is the cycle. So basically, and I think this is the message, what we built is a digital twin of a particular patient, give him really specific information and can give specific information back to the medical doctor. Now, this is in use in a couple of hospitals, in many hospitals actually now. And that made us start to think about, but hang on, what if we make a mistake? What if somewhere the data was not the way we thought it was? What if, along this simulation pathway, we make errors that propagate through that? And how reliable are we with that? And how credible is what we're doing? And I think, and that will be later on a slide, I think that these are the most important questions when we start to talk about digital twinning. So a second example, I have three examples. The second example is work that we've done in Singapore, where the question from the government was, we will see an increase in temperature because of climate change, and Singapore is already nice warm. And so we will see an increase in temperature. And how will people react to that? How will that change what the kind of environment that they want? So this is a question about the interaction between an individual and the built environment. And so what we did is we put all kinds of sensors in students actually, and we measured all kinds of temperature ranges, humidity, you name it, all kinds of condition on what is it called, conduction on the skins and stuff like that. And then we did experiments with students looking at what path would they choose you know, whether it's a shaded area or a non-shaded area, depending on the temperature, depending on their age, depending on all those kinds of things. And that allowed us to do predictions of how a pedestrian, what kind of choice that they will make, and what will be, because of that, the most optimal environment for the people in Singapore. But again, there, of course, if that results in changing the environment, you want to make sure that you have the right decision, right? So the policymakers, they ask us to do this kind of science, and then we do the science, and we better be sure that what we're doing is correct. And the third thing we did is, and are doing, is trying to understand mental health in relation to where you live in the city. So, and particularly what we focus on is depression. And so if you look into that, if you look into the data, and Luis knows also a lot about that, it's not very clear, to be very honest. First of all, of course, the definition of depression is not very clear. The definition of a serious city is not, city boundaries is not very clear. Nevertheless, everybody, including ourselves, make all kinds of nice publications about that. And so, for instance, here's an analysis that we did. I'm not going into the details, which shows that, you know, if this is the size of the city, in small cities, you have, in small cities, you get a detrimental effect on depression, and in a larger way in the cities, you get a positive effect. Luis finds something else on the same data set. And if we look into it, we don't understand. We have been discussing that, we don't understand. So that's something about the way we have to look at this data, and the way we have to come up with methods to agree on how we look at that data. Now, what we're doing with this is taking it one step further, not just data analysis, we do modeling. So what we do, that slide is gone. Okay, then I'll just show it, then I'll just tell you. What we do is we went together, we do a group model building session. So what we do is we get experts together, patients, depression patients, we get psychologists, but also artists and physicists and biologists, you name it. We bring them together and we ask them, what do you think are the determinants that determine where people are going to be depressed? Now, and in the city. So people come up with things like noise and the density, the crowdedness, and the temperature, you name it, or stress, whatever. So that's the information we get. But we also get information about people say, yeah, hang on, but you have to look at the consequences of these things. This is not linear. There are non-linear processes. You know, you stay awake because of the noise, and because you stay awake, your rhythm changes. Your cortisol level changes. Your cortisol level changes, that results into you even sleeping less, right? So you get these kind of feedback loops in the system. So we unraveled 24 feedback loops in depression in the city. And what we're doing now, again, so this was a group modeling activity. What we're doing now is pruning that and making models for each of these feedback loops and trying to do almost the same trick that we did with HIV, making models from what's happening within the body, so these cortisol levels, to what's happening outside of the body, stress that's coming from the city. So that brings me to the last slide. I had 5 minutes, I heard, so I stole 6. I think these are the challenges. There is so much problem with data that we as modelers tend to forget that there is. So we need to often go back to really what is the core of data, how did we get to this data, how reliable is it, what are fundamental assumptions. There's a paper out there that says that 36% of all the medical data is unreliable. All the medical data that is published in international journals, in archives, through international journals, 36% is unreliable. And I can tell you why, but it's a different story. But what is our machine learning things going to do? They take that data, right? So 36% of the data with which you train our machine learning on health issues is wrong. And then there's the rest, which is massively biased. Yeah, it's only for heterosexual white men or something like that. So that is something we have to be extremely careful about. Definitely if we want to make models, but also if you just do the data analysis. there's this massive problem, and I think that's scientifically the most challenging thing and also the most fun. There is this separations of scales. So we talk about processes on completely temporal scales. So we talk about the cardiac cycle, and we compare that with changes in the city design or something like that. There's no way you can connect these scales, right? It doesn't make sense also, but sometimes it does make sense. You want to understand that. So the separation is spatial, temporal, and functional scales, and then make models on all these levels, like I showed you for the HIV. How do you connect these things together? Nobody knows. I can tell you, nobody knows. Then there is this particular thing that also requires attention when we talk about digital twins, which is uncertainty quantification. So that is, you have uncertainty in the data, you have uncertainty in the algorithms, in the numerical algorithms. Quite often we simplify them, you know, we have stiff differential equations, and we only look at, you know, particular timescales. So these things result in all kind of error propagation through the system. And then you ask questions from the system like, how should I treat this patient? Or how should I change the city so that it's, you know, adaptable for the future? It's insane. Quite often, it's completely, utterly unreliable what we're doing. I want to get that across. But we are aware of it. This is the good news. So I have to think about it. And then that results in this credibility aspect. So if you have built a digital twin for something about, you know, the climate change, are you willing to tell the World Economic Forum, you know, the outcome of your thing and that the way they should change their policy? Are you willing to tell IPCC, you know, this is what we have to do based on your analysis, based on your data? Do you want to stand in for that? Is that a thing that you feel comfortable about? I don't, absolutely don't, because I know there are errors all the way. And we spoke with climate modelers. We had a 3-day session with them. They actually say the same thing. We don't trust our own models. Well, we do trust the little parts of the models. We don't trust the way we can connect these models together across all spatial temporal scales. We don't yet. Whatever. Okay, so, but there's a little bit of good news. We get more and better data. So the Internet of Things will give us a lot of relevant data that we can use for building our digital twins. We can learn from initiatives like the virtual physiological human, which has been around for 20 years now, 15 years, and methods like MathML, which are mathematical markup languages. For instance, there's a MathML for the liver, there's a MathML for the lungs, etc. So you can kind of, you know, reuse these things. There's Destination Earth, it's giving us lots of new insights. There will be possible new funding announced soon by European Union, which is called Mission Human. So things getting more megalomaniac. But anyway, that will be there. And the thing is, what the good news is, I think the governments are willing to listen to us. So I was asked by UNESCO to bring together a world group of people, actually some of them are in the room here, to actually provide UNESCO with information on if we make this or that decision, how will it affect the poor and the rich? How will it reduce or increase the gap between poor and rich? That requires this kind of models that I'm talking about. So the good news is that they're willing to listen to us. The bad news is I'm not sure if we have something to tell yet. Okay, thank you.